my character, Ben Begdickian, is a reporter at the Washington Post. Well, he has had a very interesting life, and he's a real person, as everybody is represented in this story. Ben Begdickian is born in Turkey, moved to Massachusetts with his family when he was a little kid. His dad was a minister, and went into journalism. And as part of his journey, he worked at Rand alongside Ellsberg. He knew Ellsberg. And so this is years later. He's now at the Washington Post. Everybody knows these papers are being leaked. And Begdickian, he doesn't know for a fact that it's Ellsberg. But he, in doing, you know, in contemplating how these papers may have gotten out, who may have leaked them, he realizes, you know, Rand would have a copy or multiple copies of these papers because they did the study. And that this one guy, Ellsberg, who he knew was the kind of person with the kind of fight in him. And I'm sure he also knew that Ellsberg had sort of transformed how he thought about Vietnam because they worked beside each other. They worked together at Rand. So he just deduced that it was Ellsberg who was getting the papers out. And then he had to track Ellsberg down, which, you know, was a little difficult because he no longer worked at Rand at the time. And he did. Through different sources, he got a hold of Ellsberg, and he was right that he was the person who was getting the papers out. And then, even though it was done surreptitiously and secretively, Ellsberg trusted, you know, Begdickian to follow through on publishing the papers and bringing an entire second set of the papers to a congressman who would read them into the congressional record, which therefore would make them public, which actually happened as well. The personal dilemma of Kay, she grew up as a part of this, you know, social circle of government senators, of representatives, senators, the president. These people were part of her world as a child and all through her life as her dad ran the Post. And can she do something that's going to really make enemies, potentially, of her lifelong friends and her social circle? And at the time, people thought, well, a woman, particularly a woman who grew up in this world and who has a stature in it, well, she's not going to buck that, you know, that community. So that was, to me, weirdly, leaving aside, you know, the legal ramifications, this thing that the Washington Post was going public and didn't need to have any turbulence at that moment. Leaving aside those things, she was gonna, if she published these papers, she was gonna make enemies of people in her social circle. Tom's a blast. I mean, he's really the epitome of an actor being in the moment. And that's what he does for himself and for everyone around him with his energy, with his, it's where his head is at when you're on the set, which is right here, right now. And that really helps you as an actor to play that moment fresh every single time and to approach it every time fresh. And that just, he's very good at keeping everyone from brooding or thinking back over everything that they just did and did I do it right. Just be in the moment. Let's be in this room together and let's do the scene when they say action. Meryl's kind of got that quiet and kind of crazy control thing where she's kind of keeping in her own head and keeping to herself, and then they say action and this person coalesces. This other person comes like an apparition to her. And she's carrying herself like Kay and has the presence of Kay, this imperious presence, and it's a transformation thing. Tom's keeping it light, talking to everybody, and then slipping right into the scene seamlessly. Meryl, it's more of a power thing. It was a wonderfully done period newsroom. I mean, you felt like you slipped through time into a real newsroom. Everything on every table, every little knick-knack is from that time period. None of the pens work because they're all dried out because they're from the 70s. And a lot of the papers are from the newsroom, the actual Washington Post newsroom of that time. So in between takes, you know, I read like crazy. I can't help myself from reading anything that I can make out in front of me. And there's all these little notations and letters and documents from that time period and newspapers. So you could just walk around that room and read all these letters from Ben Bradlee to the editors of the Washington Post, stories that are being worked on, you know, newspapers of that time, magazines of that time. It was great fun to wander through that and check it all out.